And now for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 388 of This Old Marketing for Friday, August 11th, 2023. And with me, as always, as he always is, my pal, my colleague, and a guy whose chances of winning the Apple buys Disney bet are sinking just about as fast as Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign, Mr. Joe Polizzi.
First of all, hi, how are you? First of all, it's the other way around, and we'll talk about this. But the one thing about DeSantis that I didn't realize, and you and I listened to the latest Pivot podcast.
That's right.
Frank Luntz was on. I didn't realize that at this point in any presidential campaign, Trump is so far ahead that has never been usurped ever. So.
Right.
If Trump does not get the nomination, it's the first time a lead of that magnitude will have gone away. And I guess, what is it, like 43 to 17 or something like that?
It's insane. It's insane. And I think, that his audience, his constituency, his followers, whatever you want to call them, they're locked in, right? I mean, they are locked in. It does not matter. And I think it's really interesting because what he was talking about, with regard to, it's also, by the way, the first time that we've got the front runner for the president of the United States on the Republican side or any side for the candidacy anyway, under 3 indictments. So,
but each one, it doesn't obviously. If you're a Trump supporter at this point, you're going to be a Trump supporter no matter what.
Of course. That doesn't matter, right? That's my point, is that 3 indictments later.
4 indictments might even help. Yeah. Every time there's an indictment, he's in the news more, it helps. What I think is interesting, and I don't know, maybe you brought this up, where it said that basically it's a dead heat between Biden and Trump right now. Something like 43-43.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then you have all the other people that's not currently on one side don't like either party. They don't like Biden and they don't like Trump. But it seems that group, if they come out to vote, dislike Biden a little bit less. Right. So that's why they're saying that Biden will win, because these people that hate both of them will say, oh, okay, well, I hate both, but I'll vote for Biden if they go to the polls. That's a big if, too. A lot of people I've heard just don't want to even vote if those are the 2 choices.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And boy, do I think that's dangerous.
There's a lot of I mean, I'm very concerned. This is, not that we're talking about AI in this episode, as we seem to talk about every one, but I'm a bit concerned with the amount of particular news that might come out, or deep fakes, or when people see something, if they're only getting it from one news source and they automatically believe it, and because of how quickly you can create content today with the help of artificial intelligence, it's going to get,
I think
it's going to get concerning.
I actually don't worry about AI in this particular case. I worry much more about the human created spin. And I mean, we'll get to this when we get to my rant. It's not the complete lie or the complete truth, right, on either side. It's that where it's something in the middle, right? But the way that it's positioned in the content and that spreads through social media is what spreads fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I mean, I'll get to this in great detail when I talk about what happened to Zoom this week, but in my rant. But it's fascinating, I think, what is going on right now in the media, and I don't mean the media, mainstream media, although that's happening too, but looking at the way that we all, the consumers, everybody are sharing their everything comes with a point of view. There was a research study. I wish I had found it before our show. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this.
But of course, you have to be ready for these things, Robert.
There's a great research study that it just came out that talked about how the way that people share social media, it's almost a foregone conclusion that people, when they share news, put a spin on it, like they put their opinion into it, right? And so you can't just share the facts, right? You're sharing an opinion or a spin on that particular news as you share.
Oh yeah, like I mean, we saw it during the election with if somebody shares something about Trump, they'll say, "Can you believe this guy?" Or you say,
right.
"How about this guy?" I mean, it's right. You're telling people right away which way you'd like it to go or which way your position. Sure,
exactly.
So yeah, exactly. And you're right. It is not the as far as I can tell, the AI is not doing this by themselves yet.
No, well,
there is a human being behind this process, but it's the ability to use these tools so much easier.
Yeah.
Whereas, when was it? I can't remember when it was the last election when they had that or they did it. It was Obama where somebody did a deep fake on it and you couldn't tell it took that person a long time to create that. It was not an easy thing.
No, now it's easier now. Yeah.
That can be done very, very quickly. I mean, just with the some of the designs that Midjourney can do almost instantaneously taking somebody's face or body or whatever and putting into an image. It's really, really incredible how quickly that can happen. So, well, and I think there's still people that do that.
Yeah,
pretty sure there are humans somewhere.
Well, speaking of misinformation, I think we probably got 50 or 60 notes from people this week sending us the link to the Hollywood Reporter article. So thank you, by the way. We love
first of all, our audience is the best audience because they know what's important.
They're just literally poking the bear. They're just like, this is what we want you guys to fight about.
Please. So yeah, what was this article? Should I bring it up?
Yeah, sure, bring it up. I mean, why not?
Should we bring it up?
It's not really one of the stories that we're talking about in any depth. But
by the way, look at this takeover ad that I didn't even know the show Yellow Jackets, but now I do because you can't go anywhere on the Hollywood Reporter site without seeing Yellow Jackets in this promotion. I didn't know about it, but I feel
which, by the way,
like I want to now.
Yeah, just so you know, this is what they call in Hollywood what they call an ego ad, right? Because Hollywood Reporter's audience has nothing to do with the audience of Yellow Jackets, right? This is all basically feeding the egos and really the agents of the equivalent, by the way, is when you so many manufacturing companies I know, they would buy a billboard on the route that the CEO took from one of their distributors or one of their retail partners that the CEO would take to work just so that they would see that they were marketing. And so this is the equivalent of that, which is basically taking out an ad in the Hollywood Reporter so that you basically all the agents, all the actors, all the directors, all the people involved go, oh, they're proud of us. We're so proud.
Well, it's almost like in the movie Dave, where he's trying to cut the budget, and he talks to the guy
exactly.
that's in charge of making people feel about their U.S. auto purchase.
Yeah,
and they have an advertising campaign. It's like, so you want to make people feel better about
a car that they've already bought. Yeah.
Yes. It's actually a smart move. Like, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing, but totally get that. I'm interested in this because of an all-female cast.
Yeah,
I'm totally.
It's a cool show.
In on this because you just don't see that often enough.
It's a good show.
Oh, you've watched it?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I'm not a follower of it, but I have seen episodes of it. The first season I watched quite a bit of, and then have not really continued on with it.
See, I haven't had Showtime since I was like 8 years old, and then tried to unscramble. You had the key with the thing, and I tried to unscramble it when. That was what I my first exposure to Showtime.
Yeah.
So anyways, your point that this article has a lot of truth to it.
No, my point is that this article is complete bullshit. But but
come on, it is. Oh, so anyways, for people who can't see,
yeah.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about the Hollywood Reporter and some very intrepid reporter there in the business news, and an artist, by the way, who should be very proud of their work here. Just ridiculous. The headline is a Disney sale to Apple. Don't count it out this time. And it goes through an argument, both in audio and text, by the way, goes through an argument about why the thing is going to happen, right? That why Apple is destined to buy Disney. Well, I mean, we'll get to this in a little bit. We're going to talk about Disney at some length when we talk about their earnings report and ESPN and Barstool Sports and a couple of that sort of thing. But
Disney episode, my favorite topic.
But basically, just as part of our little chit chat round here, it's just more so. I don't know if it was a slow news day, they were trying to put some custom content up for the Yellow Jackets folks or whatever. But this is just
if you weren't so set on your position and you just came into this without having a particular attitude one way or another, this absolutely makes perfect sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's the same old arguments.
No. Disney is not going to be the Disney of today in the next 3 years.
I agree with that.
You can absolutely see the divestiture of many of the. I mean, you could also see the fact that he's going to most likely split into like Disney parks and Disney streaming or whatever.
100%, I can agree with that. Yeah.
So, Apple buying a portion of Disney is likely to happen. I would say likely. I think this is definitely going to happen.
If that were the argument, I would buy it. But the argument across all these media platforms seems to be, they'll use their $200 billion of cash that they have laying around to buy Disney for $110 or $120 or $130 billion. That's not going to happen. That's the argument, right?
No. That's not the argument. That's not the argument, because it's clear now that Disney as the whole entity will not be the Disney we know it. We know it's going to be sold into parts.
I don't think that's certainly not clear in the articles that I'm reading. It's certainly not clear in this article.
In this article, it talks about the divestiture of already many of the parts.
Yeah, his point, which is where it gets to silliness. His point is that the streaming network is actually doing much better, therefore, and that they're cleaning up all this content. Therefore, Apple will want to buy that plus more.
Yeah.
No, it's not. That's not going to happen.
Okay, here's where we can agree. This is what I think is funny is we had this conversation almost 10 years ago, and we have to find the episode where we talked about it, where we sort of predicted that the big media companies of the future would be big tech. And we talked about how, what was it? I think one of us made a prediction in our prediction episodes that the majority of Emmys or Oscars in the future would be Amazon,
7-8 years
Apple.
Ago. Yeah.
And now that's obviously become true.
That's right.
And I love this. Actually, let's put up this chart because this is interesting. Where it talks about big Hollywood, small fish for M&A. And they talk about the big players, and the biggest two players are Apple and Amazon. Apple, $2.8 trillion market cap, Amazon, $1.45 trillion. And then you've got Netflix, which is relatively small in comparison at $200 billion. But all these other media players, including Disney, they're just also RANs now. And you're going to start seeing more and more consolidation. And it's just going to be the big three or four. And this is what concerns me, and that maybe this is the bigger issue, and it has really nothing to do. I want to get your take on it. It has nothing to do with Disney and Apple. It's the fact that we're going back to ABC, NBC, CBS. You've talked about this before. You're only going to have 3 or 4 sources for the majority of content being created on the planet, and it's a little disconcerting that that's the way that we're going. But I don't see. I mean, granted, you're going to have more outlier content creators. And we've already seen more than ever before. But if you look at the majority of mainstream content, it's going to be 3 or 4 companies creating that. And that's concerning, right? Should we be concerned? Should we be doing something about this?
Well,
Well, I didn't know you were going to go there, Joe. I had a whole show list of other articles to talk about. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I here's what I'll say. I think when we start thinking about this from a content perspective, I am bullish on the idea of multiple small. There will be the big and the very small, right? I think it's very hard to be sort of big right now and in the future, right? It's just hard to scale at a certain point. You get to a certain point, and then you need to become huge. So, to your point, if you look at the number one and the number two, and then you go down, then it's because it's just a hard business to maintain profitability. And again, we'll talk about this in just a moment when we talk about Disney and its earnings. But the idea is that you're at Netflix is bumping into the ceiling right now, right? They either need to get really big or figure out a way to draw enough profitability to grow. It's very hard to grow organically once you get to a certain point. So you have to grow sort of horizontally, right? You have to grow, basically with other platforms, because you just can't grow there's just not that many people with credit cards, right? You get to a point where you've saturated your market. And so the only place to go is horizontally to other places. And that's what, you can argue that's maybe what Amazon has to do if they want to grow it. You can argue that that's what Disney is trying to get rid of because they've gone too wide. You can argue that some of the other ones haven't gone wide enough. This is the big problem that obviously Warner Discovery is having right now, is that they have too much stuff that is saddling them with too much cost, and it's not profitable. So it's just really difficult at that level. What it's not difficult at is the small businesses. So I actually am rather heartened, and that may be a fundamental shift in the media business, full stop, to think that small and medium-sized media companies kind of are the future ultimately, right? And maybe the big conglomerates are going to go through a major disruption. I haven't put enough thought into it to really come to a conclusion on that. Where I worry, to your point, is in journalism, right? I worry in the hard news and journalism where that ecosystem is becoming only available to that which big media companies can fund it, right? So that's a little worrisome, and it would be interesting, and we've talked about this a gajillion times on the show as well, which is when will someone, a brand, product, et cetera, from a content marketing perspective, start stepping up and funding full-on journalism, right? Where either at the local level or the national level. So anyway,
well, what you say is absolutely true. But I want to point out that Apple and Amazon on this list that we're looking at of the largest media companies on the planet, they are so big because they are not dependent on a media business model. And the other ones are. And that's why you said that Netflix is going to keep bumping into it. Yeah, they will if they keep their existing business model. And the only way for them to go, if they want to become behemoth, which they probably do, stockholders want that, is to change their product mix and go and actually create products.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm saying is look at the content marketing case studies out there, even that we talk. Oh, look at Red Bull and look at Arrow Electronics. Well, what do those have in? They don't have to rely on making significant amounts of money from the media that they create.
Well, Amazon, right? I mean, it's at the tectonic scale. This is Amazon, right? Amazon, if you just do the very simple math of the subscriber numbers versus their, how much money they make and how much money they spend on content, if that business was by itself, it wouldn't make. They would go bankrupt. I mean, it doesn't work. The math doesn't work with as much money as they spend on content versus how much they get by their subscribers. But to your point, it's a marketing thing, right? The entirety of Amazon Prime Video is all about selling more Prime memberships. So if you put it into the context of the entire business, then it makes perfect sense as a subsidized marketing program.
And I would say the same thing is for Apple.
Yeah,
to keep in contact and grow relationships with those people that have Apple Plus TV, so that they can sell them more other stuff at a higher margin and continue to grow. And I think that's where if you get back to the original point of Apple buying Disney, Apple is in the media business because they're shaping culture, which ultimately gets people to buy more of their stuff. And what shapes culture better than Disney content? Not much. Not much.
No.
And so that's the reason why you could throw all the revenue and profit numbers out the window when it comes to Disney content. They just want the content.
Sure. But it only makes sense as if they don't feel like they can get it. In other words, for Apple, it makes sense only if they feel like it would go away. In other words, if they feel like there is something that wouldn't. So in other words, the only reason I could see them buying it is if they thought a competitor, but there is no competitor who's going to buy Disney. And so I don't see them buying it because they don't need to. They can get the content. They don't have to own it. For them, it can be literally just licensed content. They don't have to own it.
Well, if Amazon would come in, which would be another likely buyer,
maybe
just take that out.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, look at, NVIDIA. Look at, any of these big multi-billion dollar, almost $1 trillion. NVIDIA is $1 trillion market cap too, where they have the funds that they can buy that for their own nefarious purposes. So you've got a list of 3 or 4 companies that could buy it without thinking about it, that they could profit from it in some way. Maybe to your point, to keep it away from their main competitor. I don't know. Anyways, we talked about that enough. But I think the point is that this is not only a small probability, but a likely happening that Apple will purchase some point of Disney. And I'm glad that you've really come down to
it feels like you're wearing me down, but you're really not. So
I think you are. You're just getting tired of it.
Yeah,
you're getting so tired of it, and I'm not.
Well, let's segue to our actual main story here. Let's segue that, because it's a nice segue here, because there's actually a lot to talk about in terms of what happened this week in the news with regard to Disney profit, as well as an acquisition or a divestiture, or both, depending on how you look at it. So there's a lot going on here. Let me just explain what we're talking about here. So the first thing is that we're going to link to in the show notes will be a note from Ad Age, which is basically how Disney, their earnings, basically they've crushed it, this thing, and they've sort of beat estimates when it comes to the online video operation, which of course is the streaming platform. Now, we can talk about this in just a second, because both you and I, when we were in the pre-show, were talking about this. It's like, there's a lot here, right? Cost cutting will do this. Get rid of a bunch of titles will do this. An actor strike will do this. A writer strike will do this. So we actually predicted that they were going to really look good. It may have come a little sooner than expected. Yeah. But then secondly, the more interesting sort of to our marketing and content marketing sort of sensibilities was, and we'll put this up, there's a couple of different things to put up here, a Twitter thread as well as a Yahoo Finance article. So we've talked about Barstool Sports here, I don't know, for years, and their various adventures and whatnot. And there was an interesting deal struck this week, which is that ESPN and Penn Entertainment, which owned Barstool Sports, they have struck a $2 billion sports betting deal. So Disney's getting into the online gambling game. However, the founder, I think I'm getting that right, the founder, Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports, buys back the company. We can argue whether he bought it back or whether they just
we don't know whether he bought it back.
Yeah,
but he has it now.
Yeah, they shoved it back in his face and said, you take this. And so basically they announced this blockbuster deal this week where basically ESPN, the Sportsbook, will make Penn the sort of designated sportsbook for ESPN, where they'll have mobile sports books, and basically they'll give $1.5 billion over the next 10 years while granting ESPN warrants to purchase 31 million shares of Penn worth $500 million, which will vest over the same period. So basically ESPN, or Disney in this case, will be, basically starting
in the
to
gambling
acquire.
business.
Yeah, they're going to start to acquire this company. And so we'll see if they acquire it completely or not. And interestingly, the analysis that we've seen, some of the other analysis that we've seen about whether or not Portnoy basically bought the company back or was, given the company back, was basically based on some of the, let's call them, not so irregular moves that Barstool Sports was known to make, and maybe a little loosey goosey with the rules and whatnot. And so ESPN, it was figured was maybe a little uncomfortable with that relationship. And so basically said, yeah, we want you, but get rid of the Barstool Sports thing. So it's fascinating. So you follow this world a lot closer than I do. What do you think about it?
Well, so first of all, just a little background. Dave Portnoy did an amazing job as a content creator, built this media conglomerate that became Barstool Sports. Very crazy personality behind it, and Barstool was Dave's personality, where he does pizza reviews and he's very much in your face and does the opposite of what a lot of people think that he should do. So that's great. And ultimately, I think if you add it all up, Penn paid like $500 million for Barstool Sports. And then this basically, ESPN now wants to get into the gaming business. I think Penn's in 15 or 16 states, which will soon be 50. They'll have all 50 states, and then they'll go international. Yeah. So this is a bet on online a sportsbook. Online sportsbook gambling going worldwide. It already has, but ESPN and Disney wants their taste of it. My take is, when this deal was done in whatever it was, 18 or 19 with Penn and Barstool, that if gambling was as far along as it is now, ESPN would have been the choice for Penn. And that would have happened way earlier. Yep. But agreed. ESPN, owned by Disney, a little skittish. I don't know where this is going. We don't want to taint the ESPN brand or the Disney brand, if you will. So they weren't available at the time. So Penn goes to Barstool, and Barstool's all in. And they have they had a good portion of that online gambling population ready to go. They were the first movers in this thing. So now, Penn sees this and ESPN sees this and say, hey, let's just move Dave to the side. give him back Barstool. I'm under the assumption with the way it worked is the last payment was like $300 some million that Penn was supposed to pay Dave and whoever owned Barstool for full rights. I'm under the assumption that they just said, hey, instead of us just making that last payment, or instead of, we'll just give you this for the same value. How about that? Right. Or whatever the earnout was. We're just give the company back. Yeah. So I think the traffic is something like 8 million of the monthly traffic is going to Barstool, and 190 million is staying with what will be ESPN Bet. Right. But I think the bigger issue here. So first of all, I think this is a really good, smart decision for the ESPN brand. And at the same time, it's incredibly saddening to me. Like, it's from a business standpoint, I think this is the right move. But the fact because it's widening, the fact that online gambling is just become so pervasive. Yeah, I know how you feel about that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so easy we're teaching our kids to get right into from social media at a way too young age. And now they can go right into online gambling, and I know a lot of kids that get involved in this at 15, 16, 17, or even earlier at some points. This is going to be one of the biggest problems in our time in the next few years, because you're going to have a whole generation that gets hooked on gambling. And with it so easy to get access to these things, I don't know where it's going to go. Well,
I got a question for you, because when I read about all of this and spent some time with it last couple of days, the question that I kept asking myself was, so there's no way that Iger doesn't know about this, right? That this, because this has to have been in the works for more than just the last few days.
Oh yeah.
So he knows. No way that Iger doesn't.
He's been involved. He's been on a meeting or two.
I got to imagine, right? Yeah. Nobody spends this much money, or this much money doesn't change hands without him knowing about it. But then you put that into the context of what has been happening at ESPN, which by all accounts is basically getting the company ready for jettisoning, right? Just setting the boat on fire and sending it out into the ocean, kind of a thing, to try and sell it for parts. And and basically getting it profitable, and getting getting rid of a lot of the talent, and laying off a bunch of people, and all of the things that they did. How does that square? I mean, do you feel like Disney and Iger could be basically building, sort of I guess, rebooting ESPN to be more attractive for sale with this. Like, it's not really Disney wanting to get into online gambling, but rather Disney just sort of like trying to build ESPN into something that is actually much more saleable, therefore getting much more profit, therefore sort of helping Iger sort of jettison it off a little more smoothly. Anyway, what do you think about that?
No, it's a really important question, and my unintelligent take on that is the fact that if you put your perception aside that Disney's a media company for a second, and if you looked at all of the assets that they have right now, you would say light in product, heavy in content. So as I mention all the time, when you look at any media company, you look to right size the business where you can at any particular moment. And at this moment in time, they're way too heavy in content. So they're luckily the writer's strike and the actor strike is helping them pull back on those investments in content. And they are saying, okay, well, we are light in product areas. And what's the fastest growing product area on the planet right now in sports? Online gambling, sportsbook. So let's say, okay, great. We're going to pull back on a lot of this content creation because a lot of it in many cases is unnecessary. And we are going to then get into this product business, which may ultimately be the most profitable thing that Disney ever does. Which is sad and true at the same time. So they are recreating the entire Disney brand around where where's all the money going. So that's my take. I think that if you just took a step back and say Disney is no longer a media company, their content is only there to drive product sales of something, ESPN now makes perfect sense as a brand because every piece of content that they now create can be tied to the generation of revenue, not in the form of advertising or subscriptions, but in the form of gambling.
Good point.
Hurts basically, my heart, man.
No, right?
It does,
basically they're building a digital
model. Look what Stake has been able to do in the online gambling.
They're turning
world.
ESPN. What you're saying is they're turning ESPN basically into a giant sports book.
That's exactly right. And that's what will happen. And if you see now, we talked about Twitch on this show. So Twitch came out. Twitch owned by Amazon. They came out with the edict that they said there no more gambling content on the platform. So what's happened is that Stake, who's this big online betting company, $1 billion, I think they're Saudi backed and all sorts of money in that whole thing. They bought Kick, which is a Twitch competitor. Again, it's a content marketing play. And they get them to go talk about, and all those Twitch content creators who were talking about gambling have moved over to Kick. And I don't know if you've seen the news on that, but Kick is really starting to take off because of the gambling content. And that flows right into, and then you can just use our product. So it's getting a little nuts when it comes to that stuff. So
fascinating. Fascinating. And then in the broader scope of the other thing that made me think of, and then we can move on to our next story here, which is interesting as well. But it made me think of the actors and the writer's strike, which is my feeling, my gut feeling on this is that the ultimate conclusion of whenever these both strikes end are they're going to win. The actors and writers are going to win what they want, but they're ultimately going to lose. They're going to lose the war because of this, because the amount of product getting created because of the cost involved and the cost increases. So they'll win, but who's going to win? It's going to be the upper 10%,
the 99%.
Yeah, the 90%.
I'm sorry, the 1%, not the 99 that are going to get hurt.
It's basically the upper echelons of both unions will win, and the lower will lose because the amount of product that's going to get just cut because of cost. So it's going to be a win-lose, basically. So it'll be interesting to
and also, watch. I mean, you know this better than I do, but if you look at most of the people that are being affected by both of those strikes, they're people making less than $20,000 a year.
100%. It's the middle tier, right? It's the big messy middle tier of both, right? Which are working actors and working writers who are making a living but not a killing in the business. You know, those that were in the sort of wannabe status already had jobs of some kind, so already had some sort of day gig, but it was what's his name, or their name, actually, forgive me, that they came out and said, they've already starved me out of my house. I can't remember. They just won an award of some kind.
Not Billy Porter.
Yeah, Billy Porter. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Billy Porter came out and said they've already had to sell their house. So, yeah. Anyway,
it's crazy. So,
yeah.
All right.
We're moving on now to our next story here, which comes courtesy of Digiday. So speaking of right-sizing businesses, well, let's talk about podcasting. The Digiday article starts out by saying why some publishers are now reducing their podcast slate to try and regrow their audio business. From Spotify to NPR, podcast networks have cut their slate of shows. For some podcasters, reducing the number of shows they produce is a part of a strategy to refocus their audio business on flagship podcasts to grow the listeners and the revenue. We do see value in putting more emphasis on the franchises and core IP that have the potential to flourish and narrow our focus a bit in that context, said a podcast executive who traded anonymity for candor. Very fun way to put that. All right.
Nice.
There's hard-hitting Digiday news. Okay. Basically, NPR's podcast team has focused its efforts on fewer podcast shows, launching a limited run series within popular podcast feeds so as not to split its teams and listeners across multiple shows. And The Athletic has cut some of its smaller soccer club podcasts to put more resources into its flagship shows. The article goes on to talk about this a little longer and how NPR has really consolidated theirs. The Athletic has consolidated theirs. And it seems to be, we've talked about this with Disney and with Netflix and a bunch of companies that have cut their shows for cost purposes, but now it seems to be hitting the podcast world. It makes perfect business sense, right? Doesn't it? I think it does.
Well,
probably too much product on the market, right?
Use our example when we launched Content Marketing World, and then we said, let's launch Content Marketing World Sydney, and then let's launch all these workshops. We realized, it is a smarter, more profitable move to focus on one larger event than 17 smaller events that put our resources in all these different directions. Yeah. So is it better to launch a new podcast or invest in one that's already successful? The answer is easy. Invest in one that's already successful. So they go through both these companies. They probably have very smart business people at the helm, and they say, okay, well, we've got these 300 podcasts, and what if we just focused on the top 50 and got rid of those? Oh, well, you know what? Our revenues probably go up a little and our cost structure goes way down. Yeah. So what's bad about it? Now, you can make an argument the other way, that you're getting all sorts of efficiencies or loyalty or better buying power if they're on listening to 7 of our podcasts versus 2 or whatever the case is. But if you just look at it from a number standpoint, you can make a really clear argument that less is more. And we do the same thing in content marketing, right? When you go in and you do an audit for your consulting, oftentimes you will say, doing these 11 things and being jack of all trades is not the right decision. Focusing on 2 or 3 and doing those really well will generate more revenue with less costs. So,
that's right. That's right, because the overlap is so high, right? That you're just not getting the best bang for your buck, and you wouldn't lose as much as if you just focused, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is that when we looked in, what was it? Really, the 21 where money was just falling from everywhere to all these companies, and they were just throwing money at everything. Well, that's when most of these podcasts were acquired or started.
The other interesting thing to me,
smart decisions.
The interesting thing to me is that where they are launching new shows, they're putting it into the same feed. That's a new trend that we've talked about before on the show, but some of our favorite podcasts now have 2, even 3 shows in a week, but they're different shows, but they're put into the same feed. So basically taking advantage of the fact that when you're subscribing to a podcast, what you're really subscribing to is the creator and all the shows that they might create. Galloway is the perfect example of this, right? Where his feed now is, I don't know, I think it's 3 shows now. It used to be 2, and I think it's 3 now, but
I think it's at least 3, maybe more. that they have going on. But do you listen to Smartless with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes? Do you ever listen to that show?
I have listened to it. I'm not a loyal listener. No.
That's fine. Yeah, I generally look at the guests and see, but I think it's a great podcast. Well, they started this. Yeah, they started the Smartless Podcast Network or Smartless Media, whatever you call it, and they have 5 or 6 or 7 podcasts now. And what they do is they do little trailers as separate episodes, and then they just launched one. It's a Rex Chapman podcast about the inside of sports, which is really weird because it has nothing to do with the Smartless podcast, but they put like a 20-minute clip of the podcast in the feed itself. So I mean, it's a smart usage of it. And I guess because of the way it works, you can make a decision. Like if I listen to Smartless and I see Rex Chapman's podcast come up, I have a good shot at listening to it, but it's not going to deter me from the next episode and not. So it's just interesting the way that works.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Yeah, so there's the cross promotional aspect to it, and then there's actually just sticking a whole show. Like you put out your show number 1 on every Monday. You put out show number 2 every Wednesday. You put out show number 3 every Friday, and you basically. You pick which ones you want to listen to. You've
created the Hallmark channel.
Yeah, that's right. It's a channel.
You have different shows.
Which is interesting because that's really what a feed is ultimately a channel, not necessarily a show. We got wrapped around the axle of thinking of podcasts as, one podcast, one feed kind of idea. But it can be different. It can be really different. And it'll be interesting to see people push the limits on that.
So think about this. So we launched This Old Marketing in 2013.
Yeah.
If we knew that this was the way that was going to go, we would have just had the This Old Marketing feed, and you and I would have had our little separate podcast
that's right.
on this channel. Yeah. I'd have had Monday, you'd have whatever the case is.
That's right.
Instead of now we have 3 different ones in essence, because you've got your CMI podcast one that you do, right? Is that a podcast feed that you do for that one? When you do your little, or is that just
I do
YouTube?
The news. I do the news. It's more of a video. We don't really release it as a podcast. It's just a live video that we do every. I think they put it out every Friday. So every Friday we do just a live LinkedIn, live YouTube video thing.
But see, I wonder if it
does a
So, but if this works, it may make sense at some point to say you take that and put that on a day, and I take Content Inc. and put that on a day. But it's in This Old Marketing feed. It's one feed.
Yeah. So. We could still do that, I suppose.
We could still do that. So this is how we come up with business ideas, folks. Yeah. You and I just had a conversation in Chicago in 2008.
That's right.
And CMI was born. So who knows?
There was, however, an amazing steak dinner involved in that. I still remember that steak dinner. It was
that was a great.
Good.
That was.
That's the best place to get steak is Chicago, I think.
Gibson's.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Yeah.
And we've gone back since.
We have indeed,
and taken a person or two with us.
Yes. So, all right, let's get to our last story here that we want to cover before we get into our rants and raves and whatnot. This is just a fascinating story, and I know you didn't see it, but
I didn't see it. No, I've been busy.
Was quite, yes. You were playing golf in the rain.
I was, doing golf stuff.
Basically, yes, a Twitch streamer. This is Kai Cenat, the influencer on Twitch. He is charged now with inciting a riot. This coming to us courtesy, by the way, of CNN, but a number of mainstream outlets are reporting on this in New York. Basically, what happened was social media influencer Kai Cenat has been charged with inciting a riot and unlawful assembly after thousands of people gathered in Union Square in New York for a giveaway, leaving dozens of people arrested and several police officers injured. Cenat, who has over 4 million followers on YouTube and over 5 million on Instagram, and I'm going to be quite honest to say I've never heard of this guy.
I didn't know him either. So.
6.5 million on Twitch, said during Wednesday Twitch stream that he would be giving and hosting a giveaway Friday at 4 p.m. in Union Square Park. In the stream, he said they would be giving away computers, PlayStation 5s, microphones, keyboards, webcams, gaming chairs, headphones, and gift cards from a truck in Union Square. Feels like he was trying to pull like a Mr. Beast kind of thing. As he said, I feel like New York really deserves it. And boy, did they get it.
They got it.
Because people started gathering in, and the rest of the article talks about how there was probably some troublemakers that came to it because they came with M80 fireworks and they came ready to bash in car windows and then start fights and all sorts of things. And it got out of hand very, very quickly. The cops came in and, of course, and tried to break it up, made several arrests and all that kind of stuff. And so it's interesting because he's now been charged with 2 counts of inciting a riot, which is, there's all sorts of things to explore in that. But I guess the question I have when you start thinking about this is, as content creators, where is the responsibility? I mean, like, are we getting to it? Because I'm starting to see this more and more and more in much smaller things, on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on all sorts of things where people are doing more and more outrageous crap to people who are unknowing or just out in the world in order to get the virality on their video, right? I mean, stopping people in the street and accosting them with questions or just acting really weird to see what people's reactions are going to be. Or, I mean, have we gotten to a point where that level, I mean, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? What do you think about all this?
If it get worse or better, I don't know how to answer that because I'm generally an optimistic person, but I haven't been on this show. So I think it's probably worse. It's interesting. I don't know what episode it was, but Scott Galloway talked about this where when he started his newsletter and only had like 300 subscribers, he could say whatever he wanted. It's not going to make a big deal. But then he got to 300,000, he feels a deep level of responsibility that he knows if he says something, certain people will take action. And when we
by the way, acknowledge that it wasn't just him, that he needed other people to govern him, right? In other words, he needed people to say to him, "You can't say that."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the same thing with Kai, where he needs people on his team to say, "Look, you can't just throw out a free for all in New York City or anywhere." Like, for example, let's talk about you and I, right? We've got a really nice following of content creators and marketers.
That's right.
And if we said we are going to CEX or Content Marketing World and we were going to do a little giveaway, I'm pretty sure it would stay fairly tame.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure it wouldn't get off the hook, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Or they don't say that actually.
Yeah.
But if we were a Dave Portnoy, right, and Dave Portnoy goes in, which he's done before, and he's had to watch himself, where he says he's going to give free pizzas away in a certain city, it gets a little bit nuts. So you get to, and I don't know what that number is, Robert. I mean, but you have to have a certain level of journalistic integrity and a code of conduct that goes with it.
Sure. When
you get an audience that takes action, and sort of, I think every one of us, you get to a point where you know what the numbers are or what's working. In Content Marketing World, when it really started to grow and get out of hand, we couldn't do some of the things we did in the past because you can do things with 600 people that you can't do with 4,000 people.
That's right.
So exactly, it's just understanding your audience.
Yeah. And understanding the expectations as well as what, those guardrails are, right? I mean, you and I are, let's be honest, our hot takes are pretty hot takes. If and when this podcast ever gets to the millions or larger audiences, those hot takes may have to be a little cooler, you know what I mean? Or they may have to be a little more well-researched or those kinds of things, because just like what Galloway said, right? It's you get to a point where you have to take into account that your level of influence there's a responsibility to that as well. And that, I think, is there's no defining line for that right now. This is not something that people are trained on, like Kai or any influencer or YouTube personality or social media influencer. There's no school, right? There's no certification program that says, oh, you're going to go through this. And so just know that this is, and by the way, there is for a lot of people in when you are hired as a news anchor, or you're hired as a person that's going to be giving the news or be on TV, or they go through training, and even the most famous ones go through training. Like, you can say this is what you can't say, this is the way you have to do this. They have producers that basically help keep them in line. That doesn't exist in the world of social media, where anybody can become a A-list, quote unquote, level celebrity. And so it's fascinating to me where we're just not trained to do this. By the way, we're not trained to do it at the consumer level either, right? Those people there were certainly some that came with an eyeball toward trouble, right? There was some that just sort of said, we're going to take advantage of this situation and make mischief. But a lot of those people were like, I want a free Xbox. I want a free PlayStation. I just want to go down there and get my stuff, right? I'm a fan. They probably earnestly went down there thinking, how cool that this guy's giving away some stuff, and I'm going to go down and get some stuff.
And the next thing that will happen is that Kai, instead of doing but Kyle will do a 6-city tour where he'll have a program, and it'll be an event, and he'll sell tickets, and he'll have metal detectors going on, and the whole thing, and that's great and sad at the same time.
Yes,
but indeed. that's what the next move will make, because obviously Kai's got a great following, and we will be able to gift his followers in that way, but it needs to be like Taylor Swift couldn't do this.
Right.
I mean, it would be pandemonium.
Right. Exactly.
And she knows this, but but it's happened to her before. She's like, oh, okay, well, no, I need a whole team of event professionals around me to put this thing on.
That's exactly right.
Because a regular concert creates an earthquake in Seattle or wherever it was.
That's right. Well, it's here. Quite literally 2 nights ago, as we record this anyway, 2 nights ago, Taylor Swift finished her 8-night sold-out show at the stadium.
Jeez.
It's crazy. That stadium holds 70,000 people. That's 500,000 people. More than 500,000 people went to. Many people went more than once. I understand that, but basically, 500,000 people saw Taylor Swift over the last 8 nights here in LA. It's just insane.
Wouldn't that be the
math
thing?
On the ticket sales? It's insane.
Wouldn't that be crazy that the thing that actually takes part of California and throws it out into the ocean isn't a natural occurring earthquake? It'll be Taylor Swift.
It's the Swifties. Yeah. They estimated it added more than $300 million to the local economy. It's
she does. She moves markets. Amazing.
Absolutely. She really does move markets. All right. Before we get to our rants and raves, we should probably thank our own ability to create amazing stuff and sort of give away free things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, everybody run for it. No. We have to thank our wonderful partners at StreamYard. Obviously, those of you that have been listening and watching this episode knows that we've changed our processes a little bit, and it's been so much better and so much easier because you and I can record this. First of all, we did 10 years of us not looking at each other. Now we're looking at each other live. We're recording it live, and we've got the audio and the video files, and instantaneously we can go ahead and share those on LinkedIn. We can upload them to YouTube. We've got the audio file that we can produce and upload into Libsyn, and it makes everything seamless, and it's made my life a lot easier. And hopefully, I think what's interesting is we're starting to see some positive effects in building audience because of it. And so it's just been wonderful to have StreamYard as a partner. And if you go to StreamYard.com/thetilt, you get a lifetime discount, free trial, and all kinds of wonderful stuff. So go to StreamYard.com/thetilt. StreamYard.com/thetilt. We wouldn't be talking this way if we didn't really believe in the technology. They've been great partners to work with, and we just want to thank them and can't recommend them enough. So StreamYard.com/thetilt for your lifetime discount, which feels amazing.
It feels like discount.
Something important.
That feels like
it's not a 12-month discount.
No. Well, that's a lifetime.
If we would have signed up, 10 years ago for StreamYard, which wasn't around then, but we would be reaping the benefits for 10 years.
Enjoying that discount.
10 years. 10 that is amazing years.
And as I've said many times before, I'm a bit of an audio and video geek, and it took me a little bit of time to sort of get the settings just right with StreamYard. But
figure it out.
Once it, so just a little bit of practice, just a little bit of tweaking, just a little bit of figuring it out, and Now it's smooth as silk.
And now we got to go. And people can see our wonderful faces.
Yes, that's true.
Which I'm not sure how positive or wonderful that is.
We both have faces for radio.
Exactly. Should have stayed audio only. So yeah, we can make the case for audio only podcasts. But in this case, we decided to go the other way.
That's right. All right. Let's get to our rants and raves. But before we actually jump into those things, we want to remind you, yes, as we've just been talking about, we've got all sorts of wonderful things, videos, show notes, all those kinds of things at our website, thisoldmarketing.com. You can also go there and subscribe to both of our email newsletters. You've got our Experienced Advisors in email newsletter, and then you've got, of course, Joe's Tilt newsletter, which is under kind of new ownership, but not really under new ownership.
It really is under. I'm still on the Tilt team, but it is under new ownership.
That's right.
With
Lulu. You can also immerse yourself in the other 387 hours of chuckleheaded goodness there. And of course, you can leave us voicemails, and we love those questions, the voicemails, the notes that you send us, the links that you send us to the Disney thing. All of that is great. So come over there, communicate with us, let us know what's going on in your world. Send us a note, send us a voicemail, and do all those things. All right. I'm gonna rant. You're gonna rave.
Let me go. Mine's really quick.
Okay.
And I know you saw. I'll go first.
Yes.
But by the way, we have our own This Old Marketing channel on YouTube, which is starting to gain some traction.
That too. Yeah.
So a lot of people are still subscribed to the audio only version. They listen to us only on YouTube, which is fine if you only want to listen to us. But if you'd like to see us, go to it's just This Old Marketing on YouTube and check that out. Anyways, I had a chance, and you've seen Barbie.
I've seen Barbie. Yes,
I've seen Barbie. I just want to give you I want to get your thoughts. I want to give you my thoughts. First of all, impressive movie. I think the what they did from an originality standpoint was precious. It just surpassed $1 billion at the box office. Amazing. And one thing I didn't know, director Greta Gerwig, first female solo director to reach $1 billion at the box office. So I just think that's amazing. So a couple things from my experience. More than half the crowd wore pink. I wore orange. I felt like I fit in a little bit, but whatever. Most people came in groups. And when I say groups, I mean groups of 3 or more.
Yeah, that's become a thing. Yeah, for sure.
It is, and the vast majority of the audience were women as well, from what I could see. And then also, I thought this was interesting. I had to look it up too. It seems like a good portion of the audience were like first time moviegoers, or hadn't been to a movie in a long, long time. Because you could tell, by the way, where's my seats? And I've got assigned seats. So that's been around for a couple of years now and that kind of thing. So I went and checked it out. I found a survey from the Quorum that said they did a research study that said 20% of Barbie movie attendees can't remember the last time they saw a movie. So this movie is bringing people to the theaters that haven't done that before. And, the last thing that I want to say and then get your take with it is a lot of people talked about the great marketing for Barbie, and there's a lot of really good, and we've talked about a little bit on the show as well. But I think that, and I know this movie is not for women, but a lot of it was targeted to women.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because Barbie was a doll that targeted to women. And because this group of people are very rarely targeted, and I don't think that Hollywood, and you know better than I do, has ever understood the buying power of women targeted movies. And when it's done almost really well. And actually the success factor is a way higher percentage than any movies that target men. I wish that would happen more often, and I would highly recommend going to the movie if you haven't seen it. So that is my take. What did you think of the movie? You liked it?
Well, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. And the more I sit with it, the more I like it even more. And I, just to speak to your last comment there, I think what the interesting thing is that one of the critiques about movies that target women for the last, I don't know, forever, has been, it's kind of the equivalent of when you remember when Gillette came out with the sort of, razors for ladies, and it was pink, right? It's like, Okay, no, that's not the point, right? And so you get a lot of movies that are quote unquote targeted for women that aren't that sort of play into the older stereotypes, right? So what I think makes Barbie so wonderful is that it's just a good movie. It's just a good movie. It just happens to also be about an empowerment of women and the way that the way that they're seen and heard in the world. And I think Greta Gerwig did such an amazing job of balancing the nuance. Any man that is hurt, butthurt by this movie, just needs to check himself.
I haven't been hearing anything about that.
Oh my God, it's all over the.
Oh,
it's
really?
all over the. Oh, it's all.
Oh, I think it's that. That's
it's just silly.
Completely
it's
ridiculous.
Just silly because it's just. I mean, it proves the point of the movie. To be honest, the delicate nuance that she did, as well as the very pointed social commentary on things, is just so well done. Because you ultimately, and I'm not spoiling anything with this, you ultimately get to a point where it's not there. There's no evil here, right? There's no evil. It's just literally an absence of thought, like an absence of forethought and carelessness, and what has happened organically, both by men and women, that has caused a lot of this. And so it's so artfully done. I just really, really enjoyed the cleverness of how it was presented, and just really, I just thought it was really, really.
Have
great.
you seen
the music is so fun.
Oh, it's
and Ryan Gosling just steals the show. It's
my God, the whole Matchbox 20 thing.
They're sitting around the campfire, and
they're all singing.
But it's
so good.
But what's so great about it is, and again, this isn't a spoiler, you can find this on YouTube, is the way that he looks at her when he's singing. It is so quintessentially just this dumb boy thing. It's just, you just go, yep, I've done that. You know what I mean?
So crazy. Real quick. So on my LinkedIn page, Laurel Miltner gave the recommendation of watching the documentary This Changes Everything. Have you seen this?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I'm halfway through it, and then I'm going to have to watch it like 6 more times. But it basically talks about how at a very young age, we are all shaped by what we are seeing in film. And most of what we are seeing in film are men doing things, boys doing things.
That's right.
Very few. And what's really interesting is when you start seeing cartoons. And Gina Davis, who has been doing some great work in this area, she did a research project, and they basically took all the cartoons and they said, okay, how many female characters, how many male characters? And it's something like 8 out of 10 characters are male, and 90% of the screen time is by male. And even I was thinking about Finding Nemo. They had a little clip like Finding Nemo. They're fish, but all the fish are boys and men. I mean, it's just crazy. So we get indoctrinated with this stuff, and we need to be more aware of it. And 100% do something about it.
100%. When they're walking down the street, when they first come into the real world, and again, this isn't a spoiler, when Barbie and Ken are walking down the street, and basically they're their first moments in the quote unquote real world, and Ken goes, I feel suddenly empowered and like I can do anything in the world. And Barbie's like, I feel suddenly like everybody's watching me and judging me.
It's so anyways, what's interesting, it has the long tail of the Titanic movie.
Yes.
Where it keeps going and going and going. And we were in the 3 weeks it's been out or whatever. I don't know what it's been, but our 7:00 show on a Tuesday was sold out.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that this could be one of the biggest movies of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
there
great.
You go.
Okay.
Your rant.
I have a rant. And my rant is basically on, I don't know whether I guess it's mostly to media companies, and lazy writing. So I started getting this meme in my social media feed, which was basically a post of a blogger who then got reposted on, in all kinds of newspapers and Business Insider and all sorts of other things about Zoom this week. So two news items about Zoom this week. The first was kind of innocuous, right? I mean, but just really represented just lazy journalism and lazy writing and lazy research, where basically the CEO came out this week or end of last week, basically made the news this week, and said that employees have to come back to work. And so the headlines across, if you literally just Google search Zoom and remote work, the headlines across so many of the blogs and so many of the mainstream media was remote work era is over. Zoom kills remote work by the CEO demanding that employees all come back to work. And it's like, okay, really? And so we went and looked. You go and look, and basically what the CEO has done is said, no. If you're within commuting distance of headquarters, basically, within 50 miles of headquarters, he now wants everybody to come back to a very flexible hybrid schedule of 2 days per week in the office. That's it. That's the news, which got transformed into this whole Zoom, the quintessential thing that got all of its success from remote work, is now demanding that employees go back on site, and how dare they, and how completely tone deaf of the CEO to do that. And it's like, man, that is just lazy. That is just lazy writing. Couple that with something that may have been communicated a little ham-fistedly, but may not have been actually, which was, and this seems to be the bigger meme that's hitting my social media feeds, which is that Zoom changed their terms of service. And what they changed their terms of service to was they initially changed it to the fact that you are, when you agree to use Zoom, you basically agree that they can use the data that you are generating to train their AI engines, right? So things like summaries of your meeting, and the things where you can get clips and all the new features that they're going to add that are AI driven. And this people had a toxic freak out over, started posting it, and what they posted, however, is the screenshot was the terms of service section, which they subsequently, Zoom came out and updated it to make it a little clearer, because it honestly wasn't that particularly clear, but basically said that they would fix it to say that, no, it's an opt-in. You have to opt in to do this, right? You have to, if you're the administrator for your organization or you're the meeting organizer, you have to opt in for this data to be trained. And basically, so your users will be warned that their data will be used, et cetera, et cetera. And so two things happen. Was the screenshot that everybody's freaking out about is the screenshot that basically talks about the terms of service, where it's 10.4 in the Zoom agreement, where they offer up the thing saying, hey, Zoom, when you use Zoom, you also give us the right to have a non-exclusive, license-free, royalty-free ability to redistribute, reformat, reuse your content in a way that, makes the service usable. It's the same, by the way, clause that is in every single online service that you use, right? Go look at the terms of Instagram, go look at the terms of Facebook, go look at the terms of any Teams, Skype, anything that you use where you put content in and it displays it back to you will have this clause in some form or fashion saying that they need it. Legally, they need it. In other words, if I put my breakfast picture up on Facebook and I put my content up on Facebook, they need a license to distribute that content globally in order to not have to pay me a royalty for the content that I'm using. They need that license. They need your agreement to do that. It's part of their terms of service. People have conflated that and started to say, this is them asking for something they've never asked for before. Of course, they've had that. That's been there forever. So that's one issue, right? So that should be a non-issue because that's been there forever and they need that. The second part is using your data for AI. Yes, you may not like that. You may not want that. You may not need that. I'm seeing all these memes from healthcare companies saying, they're having a toxic freak out. We have to change from Zoom now. No, you don't. If your administrator or your organizer, your company is using Zoom, they should have bought with it and basically negotiated a contract with Zoom that includes what's called a BAA, which is a business authorization form, which basically makes you HIPAA compliant and gives you special compliance with regards to privacy and data. If you don't have that, that's on you. That's not on Zoom. Zoom already has that. Microsoft, by the way, builds in the BAA as part of their normal terms and services. And so the toxic freakout is coming from these people who are basically using this as a means of saying, oh, everybody should be afraid and not use Zoom because they're doing mean and untoward things. And it's again, just sort of lazy writing for me. And it causes all this fear in people who don't know, people that don't understand it. And then they start posting around and saying, oh my gosh, this is going to collapse, our ability to use Zoom, and we can't use Zoom. I'm seeing, actors and writers put, this is what we're fighting for with the WGA strike, and now Zoom is killing us. I can't use Zoom in the writer's room anymore. It's like, yes, you can. You can just opt out of it. Don't train AI if you don't want to. Just don't use the AI tools. So anyway, my whole rant here is and this we talked about at the beginning of the show, is the sort of laziness and misinformation that goes around, because either purposely or accidentally, we don't do the actual nuanced research. I don't know if I like that Zoom is going to use my data for AI or not. I kind of don't care, but the point is that I can opt out of it. And as long as I can opt out of it, then it's not something that I'm going to have a toxic freak out over.
Yeah. Oh my God, the water is wet.
Yes. Right. Exactly. It's happened more and more since social media, and will continue to happen. And now that you're on TikTok, apparently, God, I got my videos ready. I'm getting ready to post them, so I'm kind of excited.
Oh my God.
It's going to be fun.
I don't know if I can condone this little activity, but you let me know how it goes.
It's a test. It's a test to see how things go.
Of the emergency Robert system.
There it is.
All right, what you got? What do you got going on this week?
Work. Just working on classes, working on content, working on stuff. Starting to get slowly ready for CM World, and enjoying the slightly cooler weather here in LA. How about you?
There you go. Yeah. This week we're going to go see the Browns preseason game.
Oh, right.
Play.
Well, there is football. There's tonight.
There's football too. Yeah. There's football. I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah.
But you got that. You got our Arsenal starting their season this weekend. So it's a whole new, and then we're going to the Guardians game in Cincinnati. So it's a sports filled 3 or 4 days. Very, very.
I love it. I love it. Well, maybe next week we can talk a little bit about football and see what's going on with.
I think. Well, we should do our preseason special.
We should.
We'll just do that. See, we just decided. This is how we decide things, folks.
This is how we
next week preseason special.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, we will see you next week, whether we do a special, whether we do news, or all of those kinds of things. Of course, thank you for subscribing and following our little podcast show here. And until we see you next week, just remember, everybody, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. See you next week on This Old Marketing.